I'm going to give you a presentation now on transitions and organization of your paper. A number of you, I made comments on your paper about make sure that when you do the revision that you put in transitions at the start of the paragraphs. And I'd like to do this presentation here to show you what that might look like and how you might work on doing that. Keep in mind also from the API presentation, the announced paragraph issue presentation, I talked about how you put transition phrases at the beginning of paragraphs. Okay, so keep those things in mind. Okay, so to start with, here's an outline, a possible outline of an argument paper. And what I've got here is a set of 7 points. Each one of these is going to correspond to a paragraph from the eventual paper. So this is like a 7-paragraph paper, and I've got an idea, sort of a claim, a paragraph thesis idea for each paragraph, plus some evidence that could go to back it up. And actually, so number 1 there would be the main claim of the paper, and then number 7 would be the conclusion. And so I've got 5 body paragraphs in between those. And so let's just do a quick read this out loud. All right, there. Okay. So Ross Macdonald, a popular detective writer from the 3rd quarter of the last century, is not one of the greatest writers of all time, despite his desire to achieve such greatness. Number 2, Dashiell Hammett and Raymond Chandler are 2 detective writers whose greatness is acknowledged. One piece of evidence for this: they both have Library of America editions. Number 3, Macdonald reached a certain amount of popularity in his lifetime. Evidence for this would be book sales, 2 popular movies made from books of his. Number 4, Macdonald's own name hindered the amount of recognition he got. He published under several different names, and there was another popular detective writer who had a similar name. Number 5, the name of Macdonald's main character also caused problems. Macdonald's main character suffered several name changes, most importantly in the movies. The name of the character in the movie was different from the name of the character in the book. Number 6, Macdonald thought his writing had great psychological insight, but his accomplishment turns out not to have been that big a deal. And evidence for that would be to argue that point, you could compare with Hammett's stylistic innovation and Chandler's ability to create evocative social atmospheres. Okay, and you want to put a closed parentheses there since you'd opened the parentheses earlier. And then finally, the last paragraph, number 7, the conclusion. Macdonald is a writer with some lasting reputation, but not a first-rate all-time reputation. Okay, so I've got 5, an intro paragraph, a concluding paragraph, and 5 body paragraphs. And what we want to do is we want to put transition phrases in between all the body paragraphs there. And so how are we going to do that? Okay, and I've got a PowerPoint here that will show this. Okay, and so how to go from an outline to having an organization, and how does that relate to transitions? Okay. The most common and obvious way to organize an argument is to present a main claim and then offer a list of reasons to believe the main claim. So most students in high school or out of high school, this is their way they think of how to write a paper. And this is definitely one way to organize the paper. It's not a terrible way of doing things, especially if you've got good paragraph construction with like a strong sense of thesis and focus and development, well-developed paragraphs. This can be a clear way to present a paper. However, it's not the most ambitious way to do a paper. And one problem it has is it's not necessarily an interesting way to do the paper. There's nothing, your organization, under a list-like organization, your organization is adding nothing to the paper. And it might seem that you're just kind of rambling, like you've got this reason, and then this reason, and then this reason, and then this reason. It's kind of like a story that has like episode after episode after episode, but there's no kind of, event development through them. It just seems the same thing over and over again. Another thing is teachers have seen, hundreds to thousands of papers written like this, and so it's not going to pique your teacher's interest to just have a list-like organization. So how do we go beyond this? How do we do more than just a list-like organization? We have what I would call a rationale for the organization. And by rationale, I mean reasons for why your paragraphs are in the order that they're in. So it's not just, okay, here's one piece of evidence for my claim. Here's another point supporting my claim. Here's yet another point supporting my claim. There's actually reasons for why the paragraphs are in the order that they're in. See, another problem with the list-like organization is it can come off as arbitrary. Why do you have the paragraphs in the order that they're in? They could be in any order. There's no reason for why they're in the order that they're in. Once you have a rationale, then there's a reason for why things are coming the way that they're coming. And so that can make things more interesting for the reader. And you can actually get some ideas across. You can actually use your organization to get some ideas across. Okay, and this is where transition phrases, sentences comes in. When there's a rationale to an organization, there are reasons for the order of ideas. Transition phrases, sentences show those reasons to the reader. They explain to the reader why you're going in the order that you're going in. Okay, so we come up with a reason, a rationale for our organization, and then we use transition phrases and sentences to demonstrate that rationale to the reader. Okay, so let's go back to our sample paragraphs, that outline we had before. And here's our first two paragraphs. So we have the introduction. They brought up this idea that the idea that McDonald was ambitious to achieve greatness, but he failed to. And then we've got our first body paragraph, paragraph number 2, the first body paragraph. And it's talking about two people that have had greatness. Okay, this first initial step here between the intro paragraph and the first body paragraph, I think quite often students don't realize that this is a very important place to put a transition phrase in, because you want the reader to know, why is the argument beginning here? Why is this the first thing that we're talking about? Okay, and with my next slide, I will show you a possible rationale. Okay, so here's a possible transition phrase. McDonald's desire was to have the kind of greatness achieved by two writers, Hammett and Chandler. Okay, so this is so McDonald's desire was to have the kind of greatness achieved by two writers, Hammett and Chandler. And if you analyze that transition phrase, you'll notice that it's following a great sort of principle of how transitions should work. And it's called old business, then new business. The transition phrase, a transition sentence, starts with the previous paragraph's business and moves on to the new paragraph's business. Okay, so here at the beginning here we've got McDonald's desire. Okay, and that was desire. There's a word from if that thesis sentence main claim for the paper is at the end of the previous paragraph, desire is going to be a word that was in the last sentence of the previous paragraph, and then we repeat that word, we touch on that word again. That's the old business, and then we move on to the new business. The next paragraph is going to be about Hammett and Chandler, and see, there it is, it's about Hammett and Chandler. But notice that if we have a rationale, if we have a reason for organization, it's not just, okay, in the previous paragraph I was talking about old business, but now I'm going to move on to new business. You have to explain why, what is the connection between the new business and the old business? Why is this next issue the next thing you want to talk about? And here the connection is that the desire that was the old business, an example of that desire, the achievement of that desire, would be Hammett and Chandler. Okay, that's a logical relation between the old business and the new business. By the way, for coherence within paragraphs, if you're having problems with coherence within paragraphs, this old business sentences that have like old business first, new business second, can be a great way to achieve coherence within paragraphs. Okay, now our next two paragraphs, paragraph 2 and paragraph 3. Okay, Dashiell Hammett and Raymond Chandler are two detective writers of greatness that's acknowledged, and then MacDonald reached a certain amount of popularity in his lifetime. Okay, this can be, looking at this can be kind of like tricky, like just why are we going from this one thing to the next thing? But here's a possible transition phrase, okay? While longing for the greatness of Hammett and Chandler, MacDonald was able to achieve some amount of fame. Okay, so the idea is here is like he wanted to get like the top rung, but you know, whether or not he got to that top rung, he definitely got part way up the ladder. Okay, all right, so that we're going to establish that he did. You know, what we're talking about here is he did get some degree of fame, whether or not he got the maximum fame that he wanted. Okay, and again, notice we're doing the old business, Hammett and Chandler of the previous paragraph and their greatness, and then the new business, MacDonald and the certain level of fame that he has. And notice you've got a logical relationship here. It's one of degree. Hammett and Chandler have maximum, you know, highest level fame. MacDonald has some kind of lower level fame. So this is not just another reason. This has got a logical relation between them. Okay. Oops, sorry. All right. Now, now the next part of the paper. Okay. So let's take a look here. Here's the last paragraph we were dealing with. And if we look at the next part of the paper here, 4, 5, and 6, his name hindered the amount of recognition he got, the name of his main character caused him problems, and his writing itself was not as groundbreaking as he thought it was. Notice that those three things there are reasons for why he failed to achieve the greatness that he desired. Okay? And so now it seems like something maybe is going off in the back of your head saying, uh-oh, you've got a list going here. And I thought we weren't supposed to do lists. Okay? So I'm going to actually show you here, when I do the transition phrases, how you can take something that might initially seem to be a list, but if you think hard about it enough, you can actually find logical relations between the items on the list to make the organization, to make the transition through the list of reasons more interesting and not arbitrary. So you go beyond, even though essentially you've got a list, which you're dealing with as a list of reasons, you're actually going beyond that and you're making it seem more interesting. So with the first transition there, okay, so we've got the third paragraph, he achieved some amount of fame, and then paragraph 4, the first of our reasons why he failed to achieve the greatness that he desired. And I've got, for a transition phrase, I'm saying one reason for this failure to make as big a name as Hammett or Chandler is ironically a problem with MacDonald's own name. Okay, notice I definitely did a cheat there. So this one reason, now that's kind of like a list, like that's announcing a reason. One reason, another reason, yet another reason. Those are all list-like words. So I'm doing a little bit of a cheat here in that I'm talking as if I'm about to start a list. Okay, but I think, in my own defense, I think I've made it a little bit more interesting because I've managed to throw in a kind of joke here about the reason here. So he failed to make as big a name as he wanted because he had problems with his own name. Okay, and that's kind of, you know, may not seem like a great joke to you. For me, this is about as good a joke as I'm capable of. Okay, so I'm pleased with it. So even though I'm announcing it might seem like I'm announcing a list, I kind of tried to do something clever with how I announced it, and so that might make it more interesting. Now, my second item on the list. So here's the first reason why for failure. Second reason for failure. Okay, how can I avoid just saying another reason why he failed? How can I say something more interesting than that? Excuse me. I say, not only was his own name a cause of trouble for MacDonald, but the name of his main character also caused problems for him. And so there's a relation here, a logical relation. Both of these reasons have to do with name problems. And on the one hand, you have the name of the author. On the other hand, you have the name of the main character. Okay, and again, that's sort of, rather than just an arbitrary, I talked about this, And then I'm also talking about that. I'm showing that there's a thought relation between those two things, making the transition more interesting. And then when I get on to okay, wait. Okay. Oh, I jumped the gun there. You didn't. Okay, wait. Sorry. I did set up the slides as well as I want. Okay. So in here I got between the second and third reason here. Here I make a transition. The transition I make is beyond these naming accidents. That refers back to both of the previous paragraphs. There's another more essential failure to MacDonald's writing. And then I'd go on the problem where he thought he was doing something fancy and groundbreaking with a psychological insight, but it turns out it's not as big a deal as it might have seemed. And so notice what I'm doing there is, like, even though this may seem like a list, what I'm announcing there is that this last item on the list is the most important item. And so that's one way of saying it. And so it's like, even if you've got a list, you say something like, rather than saying, you could say, and a final reason for believing this is this, but you could say, like, a final and most important reason is yada, yada, yada. Now, you have to explain why it is the most important. But that's one way to make your list sort of more interesting. Okay, and then I got and then once I'm done with my final body paragraph there, number 6, I'm going to my conclusion here, and I want to make this transition. I still don't forget to do a transition between your last body paragraph and your conclusion paragraph. And in this case, I'm saying, despite what our failures to achieve maximum fame, MacDonald did make considerable achievements as a writer. So I'm trying to sort of make a kind of qualification there, is that the main claim of this paper is not to say that he was a complete washout. It was just to say he got medium level fame, which is something. It's much better than 99.99% of people that try to write achieve. But it's still not what he was aiming for. Okay, so there's some examples of what transition phrases might look like. And you could also look, I downloaded a file that has the outline and then the outline plus the transition phrases. And so if you want to reread that, take a look at what those things are like, you can do that. In closing, let me consider also some more advantages of rational organization. If you have just a list-like organization, every one of your paragraphs has to be saying the same kind of thing. Every one of your paragraphs has to be a reason for believing the main claim. But if you have a rational organization, you can have your paragraphs doing different things. Your paragraphs can focus on, present ideas that are not just reasons for believing the main claim. So you could have a paragraph that provided background, like the first body paragraph in this paper, sort of background. What this fame that he wanted, what might it have looked like? Okay, 2 guys over here, Hammett and Chandler, they had the kind of fame that he wanted. You can make qualifications, okay, and this is an important thing when you're making an argument. You don't want to make an absolute thing. So this paper is not saying that Ross Macdonald was a complete failure, and there was a body paragraph that specifically tried to establish that there was a certain level of success that he achieved. Then you can consider objections. And now this outline that I've shown you doesn't do that, but this is something that you can do. In fact, you can even take a whole paragraph to consider an objection. When I teach the 102 class, I try to talk students into doing this kind of thing, and give an objection a good amount of a decent amount of time, decent amount of space to sort of make its case. Try to consider a strong case against your main claim. Give it a whole paragraph, and then you can use another paragraph after that to rebut that objection. Okay, and then you can and you can show the logical relation between these ideas in your transitions. So, for example, if you go from like some body paragraphs that have been presenting reasons for believing the main claim, you can transition into an objection by saying something like, now, this is not to say that there are no valid considerations against the main claim of the paper. That this paper is making. One possible objection for this paper could be, then yada, yada, yada. Okay, and that's your transition into your objection paragraph. You spend some time establishing that reason, and then you follow it up with a rebuttal paragraph, And you could transition with that by saying something like, despite the seeming, strength of this possible objection, on closer examination, it turns out not to be as strong as it thinks it is. Okay, and then you explain in detail. You rebut it in detail. You explain in detail why the objection what are the weaknesses of the objection are. Okay, so when I'm wanting you guys to do transition phrases at the beginning of your body paragraphs, these are the kinds of things that I'm looking for. And once again, as always, if you have any questions on this, be sure to message me. All right, thank you.